Even AI, even like the most intelligent AI systems will not disprove the existence of God.
Why? Why do you think that?
I mean, I go back to Saint Anselm's argument for the existence of God, and it's like if you can conceive of the greatest conceivable being, then that conception in and of itself shows that there is a God, because there is this aboutness. Even with atheism, like that's why atheism is so fascinating to me, because they still have an obsession with God in the negative, but their obsession is still about God, and they just don't know how to quit him, even though they try so incredibly hard.
There has been in this even in this past year, I feel like in the kind of the intellectual podcast verse, this rise of a this this discourse around cultural Christianity.
Mhm.
Um, I've had several guests that are atheist, but are squeamish about the new atheist movements, you know, virile attacks on faith,
Mhm.
and that it hasn't really worked out that great. It's like, oh, guess what you get when you kill God? You get like woke weirdo shit.
Yeah.
It's like
Like,
you get the worst version of the you just get communism.
yeah, and then
It's like Marx just slips right in like it's
yeah,
me.
yeah, it's
Um
me.
ha,
OP to the masses. Yay.
what do you think happened there? Why how do you in a way, you were studying this type of thought, this philosophy of faith and of science at the time, I think, of when this was really kind of exploding onto the scene,
Hmm.
right? Or like right around there. How, how do you judge the path of the new atheists?
It is incredibly judgmental, but also you're taking something that is most sacred to people and you're attacking it, but you're not replacing it with anything meaningful or that feels good to them, because intuitively, and intuition is so incredibly important here. And Kant even said that intuition is more superior than rationality, and that this
Kant said that.
yes.
Huh.
um, so it's it's I don't think it's a critique of pure reason. It's the other critique. But he basically laid it out in all of these steps, and he was like, yes, rationality is second. That gets a silver medal. Intuition is prime. And then feeling is below rationality. But our intuition tells us that there is something greater, and we name it God. It is God. It is the greatest conceivable being. It is the author of all things. And even if it's not, it is for some people a comforting presence that they pray to, and they know they feel better because they know there is something there. I remember talking to my priest, and when I was studying philosophy of religion, I had some questions for him about like Catholic mystics and things like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, just be careful. When you're questioning your religion so much, you don't want to talk yourself out of your faith. And by doing a pretty rigorous examination of Christianity and Orthodoxy, but also Buddhism and Islam, I loved my faith even more when I emerged, because I felt like it really stood the rigor in the process and the examination, and was stronger than when I had started.
What was the at that moment, can you take yourself back and say what was one of the things that was a tough point for like I don't know if I believe this. I don't know like does this make any sense? Am I just making a leap? Was there like a conflict that resolved in your faith as part of that kind of intense examination? Because most people don't do something like study philosophy of faith.
Yeah.
We get born into a tradition, and you don't go down the well.
Yeah, you're told not to ask questions. I mean, that's actually, I developed such a great and healthy respect for Catholicism, because the Catholic Church is actually very academic and very inward looking,
Yeah.
and takes itself apart and really challenges itself. And people don't realize that.
No.
People think that Catholicism is just dogma, but you don't have Scientology universities where, there are these fundamental questions which may never be resolved, but they're still asking, they're still writing, they're still going back and taking some of the primary sources apart line by line to really, really understand it and fill it out, because they don't want gaps. They don't want that to be what God is, what religion is. It's just, filling in the stuff that we don't quite understand now. But, studying like philosophy of quantum mechanics, the professor I had was, probably an atheist, but certainly skeptical of any sort of touchy-feely.
Mystical stuff.
Yes, where culture had tried to take over quantum mechanics and be like, see the secret, like it's all about the secret. Like if you just think about it, it'll happen. Like you can think yourself into material wealth. And so he hated that, and he basically said that religion, like you don't need religion. And then so I started reading about different scientists and different physicists who were in fact people of faith. And I remember asking him about that. And he's like, well, and it's like, no, there's no well. Like there are outstanding questions that you need philosophy for that science cannot fully explain. And quantum mechanics definitely takes you into that realm. But when you realize that God accounts for the whole thing, it makes it not only more satisfying and logically sound, but you can also take things apart without worry that the whole system is going to fall apart just because there are aspects of it we don't understand.
I came across. Did you come across Kurt Gödel during that
Yeah.
time? So maybe you can even help me understand this. I I came across this is it incompleteness theorem by
Hmm.
Kurt Gödel. So we're very similar in that the weird wonky rigor
Hmm.
of the religious exploration that you never hear about like in standard life
Yeah, like Bill
is
Maher is never going to be honest about
oh,
what
you're just
really goes on.
mystical mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
It's like meanwhile
You
there's
just
this
believe in Santa Claus in the sky. That's all it is, like a
yeah.
man with a beard.
But as I understand it, Gödel was a mathematician and who found a kind of inescapable crack in all logical systems that opens the door to an unknown. And I didn't realize this when I came across him that he had also tried to do like kind of mathematical proofs for the existence of God. Like how so what's your understanding of
Yeah,
him?
that was a big thing for it's like millennia really, is the more nuanced we became in our logical systems and the greater understanding we had of mathematics. In order for the field of mathematics to continue, you had to have uh, mathematicians of faith. Otherwise, because if math brought them to, well, there is no God, then the Catholic Church would have kind of shut the whole thing down. But it's not incompatible. Like it's really not. And even physicists who are like, yeah, well, what happened before the Big Bang? It's like they have to grant that there was something, that there was
Yeah.
some force. And a lot of times they don't like to call it God, but it's certainly like they ascribe so much power, like the power of creation to it, something that lives outside of creation itself, that put the process into motion. And maybe it was just like the giant finger that pushed the first domino. That finger is still God. And, even if they don't want to believe it, and even if they don't want to name it, all of the in depth quantum computing and, atom breaking that we have witnessed in humanity, it still does not negate God. And in fact, it makes people's faith stronger. And, Francis Collins turned out to be a COVID crackpot, and I was really sad about that. But he wrote a very beautiful book called The Language of God, and it was one of those things that moved me so deeply because he's a scientist, but he is also a believer, and he was one of the people who mapped the human genome. And he was like, when we started delving deeper and deeper into this, I could finally see the language of God. And he was like, I understood what that meant. And he was like, it informed my faith, and it also made my faith so much deeper because, they were filling in the gaps, and they didn't need God to fill in the gaps because God was the author of everything in the first place.
What there's this concept there, the God of the gaps. The
Hmm.
God survives in the mind of people so long like us
Hmm.
only insofar as we don't understand a thing. But once
Yeah.
scientific discovery cracks the causal nut of whatever,
Mhm.
at some point we won't have any surface area left for there to be God.
Mhm.
It's just wait. Science will
Yeah.
get us there. Um, how do you think about and respond to that critique from sort of the Sam Harris types?
Well, I think, and Michael Shermer, like I've talked to Michael Shermer about that. And
Yeah.
he loves crafting. He's a really super nice guy.
Oh yeah,
Lovely.
he is
But he loves crafting straw men. And it's like you should craft a fleshy woman because, it's like
way better.
we have more substantial arguments than grant us. But I think what'll be really interesting, and I have every confidence that our faith will survive AI. But there's a church in Sweden that's like worshiping AI Jesus. I'm like, all right, man, if that's what you need, then cool.
If you like this clip, we've got so much more where that came from. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.